tracking catastrophic Hurricane Milton as it makes landfall this evening on the west coast of Florida.
Plus, students on campus protest Israel's war in Gaza. We have the latest. And an Oklahoma man on death row has his case heard by the Supreme Court. This is OU Nightly.
Godspeed to all of us that are in the path of this storm.
Tornadoes so far. Good evening. Thank you for watching OU Nightly. I'm Rachel Mosshammer.
And I'm Kennedy Patterson. We begin tonight with the very latest on Hurricane Milton as it starts hitting Florida.
The main part of the hurricane is still hours from shore, but already dozens of tornado warnings have already been issued across Florida. Meteorologist Carlin McCreary is in the studio with up-to-the-minute information. Carlin.
That's right. Already we've started to see some damage, and as you can see behind me, a lot of areas already seeing those oceans start to move closer and closer towards buildings and the shore, and it hasn't even made landfall yet. So we're still hours, just a few hours from Hurricane Milton making landfall into parts of western Florida. And the main thing that we are really going to see destruction from is the storm surge. We could see up to 15 feet of storm surge just south of the Tampa Bay, up to 9 feet in the Tampa Bay area. That's a really populated area. There's a lot of populated beach areas on the side of the west coast of Florida that are going to see just catastrophic damage from this storm as it does continue to move closer and closer and make landfall. So right now, Category 3 Hurricane Milton just on the doorstep of the west coast of Florida, moving northeast at 17 miles per hour. The pressure has continued to increase, and it is going to continue to increase as it does make landfall, which is going to cause it to weaken just a little bit. So coming up, I'll talk more about tracking out Milton, the heat that's going to continue here in Norman, and our OU Texas forecast. Ladies.
Thanks, Carlin. And students at OU continue to rally in support of Palestine. OU Nightly's Kaylee Johamel was there. Kaylee, what were students saying?
One student-led organization is using this week to raise awareness for Palestinians trapped by war in the Gaza Strip. Now, even though that war is happening thousands of miles away, they hope to make an impact here on campus. Students making their voices heard.
We continue to call for disclosure and divestment, and today we're doing a picket and a walkout. We're taking from labor organizing strategies and purposely disrupting our daily campus.
Students for Justice in Palestine gathered outside of Dale Hall, protesting throughout campus. It's all part of what they call the Week of Rage, a nationwide event on college campuses protesting Israel's war against Hamas, the Palestinian militant group in Gaza. Israel launched its operation in Gaza after the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack against Israel that killed more than 1,200 Israelis. The protesters say they are outraged by the high civilian death toll in Gaza during the Israeli operation. One of their top priorities, calling out university leaders and demanding they divest university investments in Israel-connected companies.
And making Palestine unavoidable for administration because they have continued to, avoid us for the past few years.
Some students joined in, while others watched on the sides on their walk to class.
The University of Oklahoma and other public universities across the country have seen this exact same thing, and that's why they are here, to give the people a voice, give young people a voice.
I love our freedom to protest. I think it's such a beautiful right to have, because of course there's things that I care about that I would protest like this for.
Now, after walking around the South Oval, the protesters entered Evans Hall and the library and finished up around 1:30. Reporting live from the South Oval, I'm Kaylee Johamel.
Thank you, Kaylee Jo. In the midst of today's pro-Palestinian protests, students in opposition to the group's message also made their voices heard. OU Nightly's Olivia Hayes joins us live from the South Oval with details. Olivia.
Rachel, Kennedy, the group
Turning Point USA OU's chapter showed up today toting different flags and signs in support of Israel and Donald Trump shortly after students and faculty started gathering outside of Dale Hall for that walkout. Now, 2 students from the group told me that they came today to give a voice to Jewish students on campus.
We wanted to be here, show support for Israel. The Jewish students on campus don't feel safe. We are an ally here. We want to make sure that they feel safe, make sure that they feel heard.
During a week dedicated to remembering the lives lost in Gaza as the war hits the 1-year mark, students on both sides of the argument are speaking out. Turning Point USA's OU chapter showing its support for Israel during a walkout today. The group claiming aggressive and threatening messages were being chanted by participants in the walkout organized by OU Students for Justice in Palestine.
When the opposing side is screaming from the river to the sea, which means a genocide, they want to get rid of Israel.
Abrar Hassani with OU SJP says Turning Point has the wrong idea of what the saying really means.
The phrase itself is about liberation and freedom, and about how it brings mention and brings light to the fact that Palestinians within the occupied territories and Palestinians living within Israel have by no means have any sort of equal civil or human rights.
Turning Point also claiming their offers for a debate on the war in Gaza going ignored by OU SJP.
They're not interested in the conversation. They're here interested in ranting and raving. And
Hassani says they have yet to receive any sort of invitation, but the desire for a discussion doesn't seem in good faith.
It seems like these guys are mainly just like partisan hacks who want to come in and annoy people, harass people.
Now, this isn't the first time that a campus group has shown its opposition to Palestinian movements. The OU Republicans have shared their opposition in previous events. I saw their president standing with Turning Point USA at today's rally. Reporting live from the South Oval, Olivia Hayes, OU Nightly.
Thanks, Olivia. A man is arrested in Oklahoma for an alleged terrorist attack. OU Nightly's Willie Gillespie is live in the newsroom with the details.
Yeah, that's right. An OKC man is in custody after officials say he was plotting an election day terrorist attack. The FBI arrested Nasir Tahadi, who the Justice Department accuses of plotting an attack targeting large crowds this election day, inspired by the Islamic State militant organization. Tahadi is accused of having a juvenile co-conspirator who has not been identified. Officials say Tahadi was ordering AK-47 rifles, liquidating family assets, and buying one-way tickets for his family to move abroad. Rachel, Kennedy.
Thanks, Willie. As tensions rise in the Middle East, President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are speaking. Kariana Gamboa has that and the rest of today's international and national headlines from the News Center.
For the first time in 2 months, President Joe Biden and Israel's Prime Minister spoke today about the growing war in the Middle East. Israel is still considering its response to last week's Iranian missile attack. Meanwhile, Israel's military has carried out more than 1,100 airstrikes on Lebanon since the start of its ground attacks earlier this month, targeting Hezbollah. North Korea says it's completely blocking access to the South Korean border today. North Korea's military says it will completely cut off roads and railways, putting a strong defense structures in place. It is unclear how this will affect ties with South Korea since cross-border travel has been suspended for years. Back here in the U.S., a union strike against Boeing approaches its one-month mark with no end in sight. 33,000 employees are striking over wage increases and the loss of pension plans. Workers say negotiations have been broken down and no new talks are scheduled. And yet again, the federal government spent far too more than it collected in revenue, racking up a budget deficit of $1.8 trillion for the 2024 fiscal year, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Kariana. Today, an Oklahoma man who's been scheduled for execution 9 times had an appeal heard at the Supreme Court. Gaylord News reporter Victoria Anderson has the latest on today's testimony.
A focus on fact today in the Supreme Court as judges heard arguments in the Oklahoma versus Glossip case. Glossip was convicted for allegedly hiring a man to kill his boss, and 25 years later is asking for a new trial citing evidence suppression. The loudest voice of support comes from Attorney General Gettner Drummond, who 2 years ago called for the case to be reinvestigated.
I don't want to second guess the prosecutors. I think that in the aftermath, when we review the cold record, there were errors that need to be corrected.
Questioning today focused on evidence surrounding Justin Sneed, the sole witness and killer. Glossip's team says Oklahoma County prosecutors held jail medical records from the defense that proved Sneed was taking lithium for a bipolar diagnosis.
The court was very active. Typically, the entire procedure would last an hour. This went the full 2 hours.
After questioning, the question came down to who knew what and who hid what. But for Attorney General Gettner Drummond, the question isn't about innocence, it's about fairness.
I think that if Mr. Glossip is retried, that he will be found guilty of a crime. The question is, would it rise to the level of the death penalty? And I honestly don't think so.
Though the decision won't come till the summer, Gettner is predicting a 5-3 ruling in Glossip's favor, giving Oklahoma's dead man walking another chance at justice. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Victoria Anderson, Gaylord News.
And the Supreme Court judges are expected to make that ruling at the end of June. While Florida faces Hurricane Milton and the Southeast cleans up from Helene, another part of the country faces the worst wildfire it's ever seen.
The latest from North Dakota and how people there are dealing with this disaster coming up.
And you're looking live at Naples, Florida. Rough surf there. We'll continue to track the storm as OU Nightly continues.
Did you hear?
Todd's in the hospital.
Who's Todd? He got a collapsed lung from vaping. He thought it was cool.
Not cool.
Promise you won't vape, Emma. It can lead to a lifelong addiction, and we can't be friends if your lungs collapse.
Bogus.
Wacky sitcom teens aren't the best people to talk to your kid about vaping.
Hey, you got a minute?
You are. Start the conversation with your child about vaping today.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed.
When we have the food we need, we are at our best. We push further. We rise higher. We unlock our full potential. When we have the food we need, we make our communities stronger. Together, we can help everyone get the food they need to thrive. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Water is our most precious resource and something that should be conserved and used wisely. Here are some water conservation tips you can try. In the kitchen, collect the excess water you use to rinse produce and use it to water houseplants. Also, soak your pots and pans instead of letting the water run while you scrape them. Water is life. This message was brought to you by the City of Norman.
And a multi-million-dollar relief package for those hit hard by Hurricane Helene. And devastating wildfires in North Dakota. Colson Pocock has the details in Earth Report.
North Carolina lawmakers passed a $273 million funding bill to expand relief efforts to its counties hit hardest by Hurricane Helene. Tens of thousands of people remain without power and running water across the state. Lawmakers described the bill as a down payment, saying more funding is expected. In North Dakota, 2 people are dead and several others are injured after wildfires ripped through the western part of the state over the weekend. So far, the fires have burned at least 90,000 acres, forcing at least 100 people out of their homes. State officials say dry conditions fueled the spread of the fires. And President Biden sets a 10-year deadline for cities across the U.S. to replace their lead pipes. The goal of the new EPA rule is to make drinking water safer for Americans. Kennedy, Rachel, back to you.
Thanks, Colson. And campus is gearing up for the big game ahead this weekend.
Find out how fans got into the game day spirit with the favorite tradition.
And major Category 3 Hurricane Milton, just hours from making landfall on the west coast of Florida. The OU Nightly weather team has been tracking it all day and will continue with the latest updates coming up. Weather's next.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing that keeps us focused. A habit we never skip to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game, to drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health? Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mind and mental health. Discover the resources you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Water is our most precious resource and something that should be conserved and used wisely. Here is a water conservation tip you can try. In the bathroom, if your shower can fill a 1-gallon bucket in less than 20 seconds, replace the shower head with a water-efficient one. They are cheap, easy to install, and can save you up to 750 gallons a month. Water is life. This message was brought to you by the City of Norman. Water is our most precious resource and something that should be conserved and used wisely. Here is a water conservation tip you can try. In the bathroom, turn off the water while you brush your teeth. You'll save about 4 gallons per minute. That comes out to about 200 gallons a week for a family of 4. Water is life. This message was brought to you by the City of Norman.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Welcome back. All eyes on the west coast of Florida as Category 3 Hurricane Milton is set to make landfall later this evening and overnight tonight. And looking out live on Tampa right now, you can already see the ocean is starting to pick up and get fairly rough. And keep that in mind, we have not made landfall yet. So already the seas are starting to get rough and the surge is starting to move in. So the peak surge that we are going to see, this is going to be very important for those of you in parts of western Florida. If you did choose to not evacuate, that storm surge is going to be very life-threatening, catastrophic, up to 15 feet south of the Tampa Bay area. Tampa up to 9 feet, and then moving up towards the north, you could still see some levels of storm surge up there. So basically the whole state of Florida does have a chance to see some storm surge from the hurricane that will be moving through this afternoon and evening. So right now, Milton is a Category 3 pressure at 948 millibars. It's moving fairly slowly, but into the rest of the night tonight, you are going to be able to see that we are going to have it move through. So once again, moving northeast at 17 miles per hour. And the major story that we have seen with this hurricane is we've seen some tornadoes throughout the day as it has gotten closer and closer to making landfall. You can see a tornado watch is out for a lot of Florida, even some tornado warnings that we did see earlier. Some observed tornadoes even in parts of southern Florida. Fort Myers, this is a video of a possible tornado from a security camera. So keep that in mind with hurricanes. Not only do you get the very strong hurricane force winds, the storm surge, you can also see some tornadoes, especially as it does continue to move through parts of Florida. So timing everything out for you by later this evening and overnight, it is going to continue to move up and through Florida to our east. By Thursday, it will be out of our area. The eye will have already moved through. So that storm surge is a very important thing to keep in mind. Up to 15 feet for some very populated areas in parts of Florida, very populated beach areas as well. Another thing to keep in mind is the wind probability. This is for hurricane force winds above 74 miles per hour. So this is right around where the eye wall is projected to make landfall. So south of the Tampa Bay area, keep that in mind. That's very important. Those hurricane force winds are going to be very, very strong. And even if you are in the in the path of the eye, you could see we are going to struggle a lot with flooding. But for here, right now across Norman, it is sunny. It's going to continue to stay that way for us, 85 degrees. And the allergies, something you can't see, but you could definitely feel. Grass and weeds are on the higher end. And this weekend, if you are heading down to Dallas for your OU Texas game, by kickoff, 95 degrees. Don't forget to drink lots of water. It's going to be very hot outside, and you know, with the stadium and everything, not a lot of airflow, so it's going to be hard to kind of stay hydrated, and be sure to kind of keep that in mind because it's going to be very hot outside, and you're going to want to, you know, be comfortable at the game. You don't want to be too uncomfortable for the Red River rivalry, you know?
Yes, making sure those game day outfits are fit for the Texas heat.
Yeah, exactly. Are y'all going?
I'm going to be staying here and enjoying the air conditioning.
Definitely.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, the festivities here in Norman have already begun. The Oklahoma Memorial Union hosted its annual Bevo Burger Bash today ahead of the OU and Texas game this weekend. The union says that it's not just about the football game. They want to be able to give students a place to hang out with friends and get excited about the student holiday, featuring food, music, games, and more. Connor Stewart says that is what it's all about, feeling at home on campus.
The really cool thing about OU and what I like about it most is how very palpable the community is, and just seeing it every day and just walking down Silville and having always something to engage in, especially when it's free.
The Sooners will try to bash Bevo and the Longhorns at 2:30 this Saturday at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. A first for OU football is coming up in the Red River Showdown.
Hallie McPherson has more on new rules coming to college football.
Recruiting in the transfer portal will see some massive changes. One Sooner will make history in the Cotton Bowl Saturday. I'll tell you all about it and more next in sports.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Water is our most precious resource and something that should be conserved and used wisely. Here are some water conservation tips you can try. In the kitchen, collect the excess water you use to rinse produce and use it to water houseplants. Also, soak your pots and pans instead of letting the water run while you scrape them. Water is life. This message was brought to you by the City of Norman. Did you know that trash, like plastic bottles and fast food wrappers, can carry germs and bacteria? When these items are tossed in the street, they eventually find their way to a river or lake and have a negative impact on aquatic life. Keep our waters clean by putting your trash in the bin. For more information, visit bit.ly/Norman Stormwater.
I'm Hallie McPherson, and it's time for sports. It is one of the biggest weekends in college football, and an even bigger weekend for Oklahoma quarterback history. As Oklahoma and Texas walk into the Cotton Bowl for the first SEC Red River Showdown, Michael Hawkins Jr. walks in for the first time even suited up, becoming the first OU true freshman quarterback to ever start in a Red River game. Head coach Brent Venables says for Hawkins, keeping calm is key.
He'll have trust and belief in the guys around him and the calls, and play the calls. Don't overcomplicate things, and again, don't try to win the game in the first quarter. And but he's a playmaker, and so you don't want to handcuff him either. And but you know, again, don't let the emotions hijack what it takes to execute.
OU Nightly reporter Emily LaBeth is right outside Love's Field under the sun, getting a first look at Oklahoma softball's second battle series.
Yeah, Hallie, it may not feel like fall, but fall ball is here, and Patty Gasso's brand new statue is right behind me. And tonight at Love's Field, in just a couple hours, the four-peat national champions will play an inter-squad scrimmage. But with the new season comes new faces. OU lost 10 seniors, but added 8 freshmen and 5 transfers. And one of those freshmen stood out last week, Gabby Garcia. She had a 3-hit game. And a familiar name, Sydney Sanders. She had a 2-run bomb in the 7th. And Patty Gasso is excited to take on a larger role this season.
I get to coach again. And no offense to our last year's team, they were all so good. All I did was kind of manage. This year, we're going to be coaching the prideful young athletes. They're so proud to be here.
OU starts their journey to Strive for 5 tonight at 6:30, and this is their last time to get some reps before they take on Texas A&M Commerce. Reporting from Love's Field, Emily LaBeth, OU Nightly.
Thank you, Emily. The NCAA Division I Council made some changes to high school signing days today, eliminating the national letter of intent from future college athletes. Because of the transfer portal and money changes, this makes the long-standing tradition outdated and not needed. Kennedy, Rachel?
And Hurricane Milton continues to make its way towards Florida.
The latest when we return.
There are a lot of temptations facing young people today, like electronic cigarettes and skateboarding. Each vape pod can contain the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. This can lead today's youth to a lifelong addiction and severe lung damage. Recall and consider the facts before making a poor decision.
The health class film guy isn't the best person to talk to your kid about vaping.
Got a few minutes?
You are. Start the conversation with your child about vaping today.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing that keeps us focused. A habit we never skip to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game, to drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health? Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mind and mental health. Discover the resources you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
I'm Clay Webster at the OU Nightly Update Desk. Moore Public Schools confirms that the juvenile arrested in connection to a terrorist plot in Oklahoma City was a virtual student at South Moore. That information was shared in a statement released by the district today. The student's name has not yet been released. Rachel, Kennedy, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Clay. And Carlin, what can we expect the next few days?
Well, it's going to heat up over the next few days. That's something to remember because you want to stay hydrated, especially if you're going down to the Red River rivalry. And we're also tracking Hurricane Milton. It's going to cause a lot of catastrophic damage in parts of Florida. So just keep Florida people in your thoughts and prayers, you know. It's going to be a hard next few days for them.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlin. Thank you so much for watching OU Nightly. I'm Rachel Mosshammer.
And I'm Kennedy Patterson. Be sure to watch OU Nightly live weekdays at 4:30. Good night.
Hate is loud. It gets clicks. It gets